All right, everyone, a settlement here needed my help, so I'll be here for a few months. Anyway, we've got to talk about Kamala Harris because new polling came in, and it's not looking particularly good for her. She's not in the top three in any of the starting states. That's not a huge surprise because Kamala's, running now a distant fifth. She's sort of tied with Buttigieg, but here's the real damning part. She's also tied with him for fourth place, roughly, in California. Kamala Harris has a home field advantage there. If she can't even crack the top three, and California being a fairly early state with a huge amount of delegates, if she can't even come in like at least third in her home state, being, come from behind candidate, she's toast. She's completely done. At this point, I would say Kamala Harris is now basically, her campaign has ended. She can pull in all the money she wants. It obviously doesn't matter. She can put out ads. It doesn't matter. She's done fairly well at a couple of the debates. For the most part, not that this is saying much, but her debating skills have been okay, generally speaking. She got Tulsied, but that didn't cause her decline. She was already for a month before that in decline anyway. Her polling numbers had been going down. She peaked early. What happened is that she was a flash in the pan candidate, a Fiorina, a Ben Carson style candidate. This happens every election cycle. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens to others. It's possible still. There's enough time in the race for another candidate to rise up into third place and then crash and burn the same way that Kamala Harris did. She was, for a brief period in time, arguably in second. She was tied with Sanders and with Warren. If she had maintained that support, she'd have a lead in California. She'd probably be doing fairly well. I would expect of the starting states, probably South Carolina would be a big one. I think she's in fourth there. In some of them, it's like Bernie Sanders, for example. He's been running in third. He doesn't have the home field advantage in New Hampshire. He only has a roundabout home field advantage because it happens to be the twin state of Vermont. He happens to be popular there, but he's consistently been the leader, including against people who are considerably ahead of him in national polling. Kamala Harris, even at her best of times, has never, as far as I know, been in the top three in any state. Well, that's a big problem. Kamala Harris really, at this point, if she was smart, would drop out and endorse one of the other frontrunners, give them that shot in the arm that they would need to go on ahead, and she'll do that before the states even begin voting. That's her way forward. It's the opposite of Buttigieg. Buttigieg has risen up a little bit. He's managed to stabilize. He's arguably at 6%. He can be a kingmaker by sticking it out. She can be a kingmaker by getting out of the race, arguably. I don't say that because I hate Kamala Harris, although I do. I think she'd be terrible for the country. I'm not worried about her, because if she stays in, she's only hurting herself. She's got to make that choice at this point, I would say, based on her policies and her own inclinations. Her best bet would be to drop out today and endorse Elizabeth Warren, give her the nomination, which is what that fundamentally would do. Kamala Harris's fans, I think, would find her more palatable, but they're waiting for an endorsement. As Kamala Harris's fans, they've amalgamated behind a strong, empowered woman-style candidate. They hate Warren right now, but if Kamala says it's okay, they'll be among her most ardent, diehard fans. If she were to endorse someone like Biden, who ideologically is totally dissimilar, I don't think it'd work. Bernie Sanders, I think, is seen as the enemy, more by Kamala and Warren fans than anyone else. He's seen as someone who shouldn't even be running, and that's undeserved partially. Although I can sort of understand why they would think that. They're looking at this man, he's almost 80, he's already run before, he basically said before he was done. There's no reason for him to be in there, he can't win. The thing is, Kamala Harris's fans don't understand Kamala can't win either. It was funny to see them in the last debate when Gabbard was precluded from going there. They're like, ha ha ha, yes, it's Kamala's moment, revenge for Kamala. Well, where's Kamala now? She's in fifth place. She can't even crack the top three in her own home state. Now, of course, California is something that these people spend a lot of time on. This is the far left juggernaut, huge delegate count. It's an important state. But right now, like, Biden has been spending most of his time in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada. Sanders has branched out some. He's mainly, I think, focused on Iowa. I think Sanders is counting on winning New Hampshire and figures if he just grabs up Iowa as well, if he gets those first two states, it gives him the boost he needs to crack into the rest of them and do well enough on Super Tuesday to be the nominee. Now, Sanders is a wild card. Here's a big thing. Imagine that Sanders is forced to drop out. What does this mean for Kamala Harris? what does it mean for everyone's numbers? I would think if the person was like a Bernie bro, they'd probably back Biden. Very reluctantly, or Buttigieg, because they're male. If they're an ideological leftist, arguably they back Kamala Harris. They can't back Warren because, number one, Warren, I think, is seen as his main rival. He would have to directly endorse to get those people aboard. So until that point, until there was an endorsement, I don't think they'd back her. Number two, ideologically, she's not a progressive. She's a pretend progressive. Kamala Harris is far left, at least on many issues. Of course, she was a tough-on-crime Gore-style liberal prosecutor, but that was a while ago. So she's moved further and further left. It's not like Warren, where a couple of years ago, Warren decided that the best career opportunity for her was to pretend to be progressive, to pretend to be grassroots, I don't take corporate money, stuff like that. But it's pretense. Bernie Sanders fans tend to be ideologically intelligent enough to understand who's being authentic. I don't agree with their political views. Your economic, if you're a Bernie bro, your political views are nuts as far as the economy goes. But as far as understanding who's been consistent in their economic views, yeah, they've definitely got a little bit of an advantage over the Warrenites. I'd say the Warrenites, arguably, though, have a better economic view because Warren, of course, do you really think that she'd endorse Green New Deal if she were elected? No, she'll pay lip service to it, then water it down so much it's nothing like that, and it's basically a carbon tax or something. Something opportunistic, something she can make money on, and her other corporate buddies can make money on. It's like when she drinks her piss beer, her Rolling Rock. It's very, very funny to see. So I would say at this point, Kamala's done. Buttigieg has a better chance, always did. With Sanders arguably now out of the running, and Joe Biden potentially one aneurysm away from a wheelchair, there isn't a whole lot actually in the top of the field. There's Elizabeth Warren and possibly Pete Buttigieg. You might get to the point where Beto O'Rourke ends up in third place in this race before the voting begins. It could theoretically happen. Imagine that, how fucking funny it would be. That's about all. Peace out.